Viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. In this segment, we are chatting with Alicia Edwards, and she's the executive chairman of the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited. And this morning, we're speaking specifically, don't treat Tobago as a stepchild. Equality for Tobago on the Airbridge. Good morning and welcome.
And good morning to your viewing audience.
Excellent. All right. We're happy to have you on with us this morning. So, as we begin the conversation, quite recently, we would have had once again yourself and a number of others appear before the Joint Select Committee. And it would appear that in the mix of questions being asked, you did not hesitate to use the opportunity to put into the national space the continued concerns and challenges as it relates to the Airbridge and CAL. So, let's start from that perspective. What has specifically the tourism agency been up to in terms of its efforts as it relates to CAL as a critical stakeholder in the work that you do?
Okay, thank you so much. I want to start by just putting everything into context. A lot of times we think of the GSC as a punitive body, but it's really a good and essential part of a democratic arrangement where funds are given to statutory boards and there is a public performance appraisal of sorts for that organization. But it is also for me, and I went into the GSC sitting, I saw it as an opportunity to talk not only about the work that we were doing and giving account about that, but to talk about the challenge, the resource, and the other challenges that we face in this space. In tourism, two critical things are transportation and funding for marketing. Because tourists do not come on a magic carpet. They have to fly or they have to come by boat, cruise, or whatever else. And transportation, neither air nor sea transportation into Tobago is controlled by TTAL or the Tobago House of Assembly. So there must be a level of coordination and synergy. And it was from that perspective that those concerns were raised. Air transport has always been difficult, not just for visitors, but for locals. And so it was important for me to insert at that point the continued, because they are continuing for more than 50, 75, 100 years, the continued difficulties that we and our visitors have in accessing this space in a reasonable and also a confident manner. TTAL has, as all other teams before, we have continued the conversation with Caribbean Airlines. We have been meeting with them regularly. They are aware of our issues. We have also been talking to the Airport Authority, the Civil Aviation Authority, because all of those entities come together to regulate what happens in the airspace and in the air transportation arrangement. Those organizations do not fall under the purview of the Ministry of Tourism. Some fall under the Ministry of Transportation, others fall under the Ministry of Tourism, of Finance. And so there is need for some sort of coordination, right? Realignment or coordination to ensure that issues of tourism and transportation and air services and all of that are dealt with in a way that benefits both destinations, not just Tobago, but Trinidad as well.
So, and based on what you're saying, we saw and listened to the GSC, and I could not help, even as someone that feels very strongly, residing and operating here on the island and having to be back and forth, that there was some sense of not a full appreciation on the part of those who primarily reside in Trinidad. And I want to be specific to say, reside and operate out of Port of Spain, Trinidad, to have an appreciation for what might be those broader issues in Trinidad, even in those outlying areas, and even further, the connection with Tobago. Are we at a point where we have got to place greater emphasis on the need for representation from citizens that understand and appreciate the concerns, and therefore we can better contribute to the solutions at the policy making level in terms of CAL, because the cry and the call goes out there constantly from several angles, but still we are yet to see meaningful solutions. They may attempt things, and I say without a shadow of a doubt, perhaps to look a little good and to look as though you're responding to the issue. But are we at a point where we certainly need greater players in there, specifically out out of those who experience these kinds of challenges and are within these agencies and organizations and so on to make a greater contribution at that level in finding solutions?
I want to answer that in two ways. I know and I'm sure that there is always Tobagonian representation on the board of CAL and the other entities that make those decisions. But separate and apart from just transportation, there has been a national unwillingness a lack of full appreciation for the concerns of Tobago people in a number of areas. And it's all about you need to walk in the shoes of a man in order to appreciate what the man is going through. And so Tobagonians and people who have intimate knowledge and who operate on Tobago, they have a different appreciation for our challenges. Some of our repeat visitors, some of our reps and tour operators who are very familiar with the destination are a lot more empathetic and articulate about the challenges of getting to Tobago than our counterparts in Trinidad. Because remember, our counterparts in Trinidad see Tobago as a getaway destination. And because they have planned those getaways 3 or 4 or 5 months in advance and secured their flights and everything else, they think that there is some difficulty. They don't understand why Tobago people cannot get through with the same ease that they do. But remember that when they want to go for medical services or they need to take a class at the university or they need to do some business in town, they jump in a car. There is no road between Tobago and Trinidad for us to do that. There are lots of vehicles in Tobago, maybe more per capita than anywhere than in Trinidad, but there is no bridge, there is no road for us to go. And so we are totally dependent on the air and the sea services. So Kyle's posturing and that it is really an economic issue and the route is unviable does not take into account that the historical arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago since 1889 has not allowed or facilitated a third options for Tobagonians to move off Tobago. Neither has it made adequate arrangements for Tobago to be more self-sufficient within this space. Administratively and legislatively, how we have set up things is that Tobagonians must go to Trinidad for essential things. Very few of us go for leisure. And all of that comes into the mix, but I think that appreciation does not come through. So it is part of my fiduciary duty in the agency to talk about that. But that conversation is not just being had at the level of Tobago and Trinidad. At the recently concluded CARICOM discussions, the Premier of Dominica, who is the chairman of CARICOM, talked and he admonished leaders to work towards this single movement treaty or to operationalize the single movement treaty that they would have signed. And why do you think he wants to do that? I think there is a growing recognition within the region that Caribbean people can be the Caribbean market for tourism, for trade, for cultural exchange, etc., can be broader and wider and more developed if we solve the issue of movement between the islands. And so the cries of Tobago in terms of movement and being able to move freely and affordably and reliably between Trinidad, those cries are being echoed on a larger regional level in terms of movement between the islands. And that will benefit all of us, tourism including. So it's a difficult arrangement, but it's a conversation that has to be had. And I was very grateful for the opportunity of the GSC to do that.
All right, excellent. And from where we sit, we want to say that certainly the national attention being brought to it. And I want to indicate that, folks, we got to call on a number of our stakeholders and entities to really ensure that that representation and the voice is heard, because ultimately, you could not have said it any better. From where we sit, we have an appreciation and understanding because traveling between the islands for us is a must and not just an opportunity where we occasionally, may visit from time to time. All right, so we got to leave it there for this morning. We want to thank you very much, Alicia Edwards, Executive Chairman of TTAL, for joining us here on the Tobago Updates Morning Show. All right, viewers, treating with some of the topical issues and concerns. And imagine we only started there with Carl. We haven't even touched on the Sea Bridge just yet. Again, concerns with connecting the islands, Tobago and Trinidad. And we look forward to improvements in terms of that progression with the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. All right, viewers, at this point, we're preparing to head on into our next interview with Chantal Lindsay. And she's a cast member for the O'Shea Benefit Concert. So we look forward to those upcoming discussions. A quick shout out here this morning on the live with us, Rambo Elias, Julia Brown, Alvin, Big Doggy Douglas. All right, Auntie Dora in the mix this morning, Lisa James, QK Melville, Pearl Murray Beard, Sean Toppin, Godfrey Moore, Terry Trinidad. Good morning to each and every one of you. And viewers, we want to thank you so much for continuing to choose the Tobago Updates morning show, and to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.